Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for another episode in my Nation Roulette series. For those of you who don't know what the Nation Roulette series is, because you might be new to the channel, and if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. Nation Roulette is a series where I go through countries across the world and profile their footballing scene right now and historically. And today it is the turn of the former Soviet nation of Estonia. If you want to check out any of the other Nation Roulette episodes that I have done thus far, there is a playlist link in the description with all of them in it for you to check out at your own pace. But before you watch any of them though, let's get into the footballing scene and history in Estonia. Estonia is located in the Baltic region of northeastern Europe, bordering countries such as Latvia and Russia, with Finland and Sweden both being easily reachable by sea. Apparently, the region of Estonia has been inhabitable since 9000 BC, and from the 13th century onwards, it has been ruled over by the likes of Germany, Poland, Sweden, Denmark, and Russia. Nowadays, it has a population of 1.33 million, still not having fully recovered from the effects of World War II, during which the population shrank, either by virtue of civilians fleeing or dying, by as much as 18%, one of the highest figures in Europe. Football was brought over to the country by English sailors during the early 20th century, although at that point the country was still part of the Russian Empire. A team was formed in Tallinn, the country's capital, in 1908, and the following year the first recorded match between Merkur, the second team to be set up in the country, and Meteor took place, which Meteor won 4-2. After Tsar Nicholas II of Russia was overthrown and then executed along with the entirety of his family in 1917, the Russian Civil War began, and a subsidiary of this conflict was the Estonian War of Independence, which saw the likes of Latvia and the UK join forces with the Estonian army to defend the region against the Soviets. It came to an end in February 1920 with the Treaty of Tartu, in which the USSR recognised Estonia's autonomy and relinquished control over the region in perpetuity. That went well. Estonia's first officially recognised international fixture in football came 8 months later against Finland, although as is the case with so many of the countries who have featured in this series thus far, they didn't start off very well, as Finland proceeded to stick 6 goals past them without any reply. It was allegedly the first match that was played by some of the Estonian players on a grass surface, and clearly their lack of practice showed. In 1921, the Estonian Football Association was set up, and within 3 years they had become affiliated with FIFA and participated in their first ever, and what has proved to be to date only, Olympic Games competition, the 1924 edition held in Paris, in which they lost in the first round to the USA. Over the next few years, they performed quite well in friendlies against their near neighbours such as Latvia and Lithuania, leading them to declare themselves as the official champion of the Baltic region. This sparked an idea to hold an official competition between Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland and Poland to determine which of them truly was the champion of the Baltic region, although Finland and Poland, despite being invited, didn't actually participate in it. It was named the Baltic Cup, and the first competition took place in 1928, 2 years prior to FIFA's first World Cup, and Latvia ended up triumphing, with Estonia coming in second and Lithuania in third. It was held on an annual basis until 1938, apart from in 1933, when feuds over match scheduling and supposed refereeing bias towards Lithuania meant that Latvia pulled out and the tournament was subsequently cancelled, and in 1934, as a result of the previous year's disputes that clearly haven't been resolved just yet. It was then put on hold in 1940 as a result of the Soviet Union occupying each of the 3 nations, before officially restarting in 1990 after a few unofficial competitions were held under Soviet rule, becoming biennial as of 2008. It is still played to this day, making it the oldest currently active international competition in Europe, after the British Home Championships stopped in 1984. Despite originally proclaiming themselves as the best in the region, Estonia have actually performed the worst in the competition by quite some distance, as Latvia and Lithuania have won 13 and 10 titles respectively, whereas Estonia have scooped up just 4, with 3 of them coming prior to 1940, although they did win the delayed 2020 Baltic Cup in June. Estonia did actually attempt to qualify for the World Cups in 1934 and 1938, although they were unsuccessful on both counts, and in 1940, despite the USSR signing an agreement 20 years ago granting Estonia autonomy in perpetuity, it was occupied by the Soviets and became part of the USSR as a result, leading the national team, the league and the FA to be immediately dissolved. They would be occupied by Germany during the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union from 1941 until 1944, and the national team did play a couple of games, but by that point, a few of their key players had fled west, and in the years that followed, many more would do the same. One of them was a man named Ivan Mixon, a goalkeeper who was later accused of having collaborated with the Nazis in committing heinous war crimes as part of Estonia's secret police. In order to escape capture by the Soviets as they retook control of the country, he fled to Sweden and then Iceland after a boat scheduled to take him to Venezuela broke down in Reykjavik, where he became a prominent figure in Iceland's basketball scene, and his children would go on to play for the Icelandic men's national team and his granddaughter for the women's national team. Post-World War II, according to Uno Pier, who became the first manager of the national team post-independence, the sport suffered a massive decline in popularity owing to a lack of a competitive club in the new Soviet league structure. This was reflected by the fact that sports such as basketball and cross-country skiing overtook football in terms of popularity and spectatorship, as football began to be seen as the sport of the people who were in control as opposed to the sport of the general masses. Throughout the 1970s, not a single Estonian club even took part in USSR's national leagues, making them the only one out of all the Soviet nations at that time not to participate in it to some capacity. However, when the USSR collapsed in 1991 and Estonia regained independence, they immediately set about taking part in qualifying for the 1994 World Cup, having re-affiliated with FIFA straight away, and competed in the first official edition of the Baltic Cup since 1938, in which they came in last. Football became much more popular once again, partly as a result of Flora, the country's most successful team, being founded in 1990 by Aivar Parlak, a children's author with a fervent passion for the sport. It was also as a result of the success of goalkeeper Mark Poom on the continent, who would later star for the likes of Derby, Arsenal and Sunderland, even scoring a goal for the Black Cats against Derby in September 2003. Many players subsequently aspire to achieve more than Poom ever did in his career, which means testing their luck abroad and attempting to make it into the big leagues, although thus far, only a select few, perhaps most notably Ragnar Klavan, who has played for Augsburg and Liverpool, have managed to achieve some notoriety on the continent. The fortunes of the national team post-independence weren't exactly that good to begin with, only gaining 1 point from 10 games in their 1994 World Cup qualifying group and losing all 10 of their outings in qualifying for the 1996 Euros in England, which formed part of a run of 3 years without a win. That particular run ended on the 5th of October 1996, 4 days before their reputation was dragged through the mud once again in a World Cup qualifying match against Scotland. The Scots protested about the inadequate floodlights at Estonia's ground, the Kadrioru Stadium in Tallinn, with the match due to kick off at 6:45 PM, but FIFA accepted Scotland's protests and ordered the match to start at 3 PM instead. The Estonian FA were angered by the switch owing to the hits that they would suffer financially from gate income and TV revenue, and thus decided to simply not send their team to the match. Amusingly though, the Scottish team did actually enter the field of play along with the referee and his assistants, and the game actually started, with Scotland kicking off as chants rang around the stadium of "there's only one team in Tallinn," although within 3 seconds the ref blew his whistle again to signify the end of the match. Scotland celebrated, believing that they'd be awarded a 3-0 win owing to Estonia forfeiting the match, but FIFA ordered the game to be replayed in Monaco instead, a game which ended in a 0-0 draw. Estonia are still yet to qualify for a major international tournament in their history, coming the closest for the 2012 Euros in Poland and Ukraine, as they came second in their group behind Italy and ahead of the likes of Serbia and Slovenia, although they would lose 5-1 on aggregate in the playoffs to the Republic of Ireland. Within 3 years, they were drawing 0-0 with San Marino in the Euro 2016 qualifiers, giving San Marino their first ever point in Euro qualifying in the process, once again blotting Estonia's reputation in the footballing scene. Indeed, for Euro 2020, they once again only gained 1 point from 8 games, conceding 26 goals in the process, and they can only qualify via the playoffs for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar after drawing once and losing the other 3 of their games thus far. Their biggest victories in their entire history are 2 6-0 triumphs, one against Lithuania in 1928 and the other against Gibraltar in 2017, but their heaviest defeats are 2 defeats by 8-goal margins, one in 1922 at the hands of Finland in a game which finished 10-2, and the other in 2019 against Germany, when they shipped 8 goals without mustering one in response. They currently sit 110th in the FIFA World Rankings, although they have reached as high as 45th during their heyday in March 2012 and sunk as low as 137th. But surprisingly, that was in October 2008, as opposed to when they couldn't win a game for 3 years, as they fell to 135th, and not lower than that, somehow, during that run. The man with the most caps for the national team is Martin Rein with 157, which was briefly a European record, and their record goal scorer is Anders Opar with 38. Their national league, the Meisterliga, was set up in 1992 after they gained independence from the Soviet Union, although there had been one running from 1921 to 1944, which was dominated by Sport Tallinn and Estonia Tallinn, both clubs that actually no longer exist, and the league is part of the Soviet league system from 1945 until 1991. Ever since 1992, the league has been dominated by 2 teams, Flora and Levadia, who have won 22 out of the 30 league championships between them to date, and neither of them have ever been relegated from the top flight. Levadia, in fact, have only finished outside of the top 3 just once in their 22 top flight campaigns, and Flora just 5 times out of their 30 seasons in the Meisterliga, and just 5 other teams have won the league title, with 3 of them now defunct. The league itself originally began with 14 teams and was split into a Western and Eastern Championship in its first campaign, before moving to a summer-spring schedule the following campaign and reducing in size to 12 teams. Nowadays, it begins in March and ends in November, and only 10 teams compete in it each year, with each team facing the others 4 times. The league winners go into the Champions League, and the cup winners and the second place team in the league go into the UEFA Europa Conference League, with 1 team automatically relegated and 9th place going into a relegation playoff against the second place team in the Esiliiga, Estonia's second division. Remarkably, and as quite a nice closing fact to conclude this video, the oldest player to have ever played in the Meisterliga was Boris Dugan when he was aged 51 years and 153 days, and the youngest was aged just 14 years and 336 days, whose identity was Andrei Tunin. And that just about wraps up today's video profiling Estonia's footballing scene and heritage. If you enjoyed this video, of course, as I said at the start, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and ring the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a video straight away. And if you want to check out any of the other Nation Roulette videos, the playlist link is linked in the top of the description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.